Over the last few sessions, I have talked a lot about space and the different technologies working there. And last time I talked to you about the difference between the Earth orbit space economy versus the moon space economy. And today I'm going to talk about two technologies or two areas where things are being worked on regarding in-space economy. The first is re-entry technology, and the second is the replacement of the ISS, the International Space Station, which is scheduled to be decommissioned in 2030. So, if I look at the re-entry technologies, so as I've said earlier, that over time it has become much more easier, I would say comparatively easier, to send things from the Earth to the orbit, to space. But it's far more difficult to get things from space back to Earth, specifically when you're talking about material things. So there's one thing that's being transmitted, that is signals. Like, okay, the different technologies are collecting data from there, taking pictures and other what is called like geospatial data, and they're transmitting back. But that is a non-material thing. Like signals are non-material. But when you talk about transporting material things from space to Earth, that's a very challenging thing. And I have also mentioned that when I'm talking about material things, I'm talking about in-space manufacturing. So manufacturing objects in space. And why is it so? So manufacturing in space, there are certain areas of which are more popular, like biotechnology, semiconductors are two of the most common areas that I've seen so far during my time researching these topics. So one of the things that is more difficult, that makes this thing more difficult, is the heat. Because when these payloads re-enter the Earth's orbit, they are moving at about 7.6 kilometers per second. And because of such high speeds and because of the interactions that happens in the Earth's surface, the atmosphere, the temperature of the body that is descending into Earth, it goes to about 1600 degrees Celsius. So that's a very high temperature, 1600 degrees Celsius. So uh, yes, the payload has to be made with certain kind of materials that has to be able to withstand those amount of temperature. Otherwise, it won't be able to withstand that amount of temperature. That's the biggest of all the other challenges that's in this process. That's by far the biggest challenge about withstanding those kind of temperatures. The different startups are coming up with their own proprietary technologies about on how to withstand this challenge. So, and again, okay, before I continue with some videos, I want to tell a bit more about this thing. So, this is all a part of this whole system within this economy. So, when I talk about re-entry, so there are certain companies that are working only on this re-entry technology about how to bring things back into space, back from space to Earth. But there are other companies that are more vertically integrated. Like they also provide the manufacturing services as well as the re-entry services. So first, let me talk about the whole big picture. So when you talk about re-entry, it has to re-enter something. It's not just going to re-enter anything random. So what it is re-entering are the objects that are being manufactured in space. So where does this whole process start? It starts with companies that are working on building manufacturing things in space. And those are mostly like traditional companies, like those companies that already exist on Earth. Those are most likely not startups. So the in-space manufacturing startups are those companies that are providing the manufacturing infrastructure to those already existing companies. That okay, we have this technology, then now you can use our components to manufacture on space. And there are multiple startups, and the most important question here is that okay, so who owns the IP? That's the whole thing. For example, owning the IP is the most important thing because that shows the ownership of the whole product. So across different companies, it's different. Like for some companies, the IP is owned only through the manufacturing companies, which are like old existing companies. These startups do not own the manufacturing IP, even though they are called as in-space manufacturing companies. But what they do is actually they only provide the infrastructure to manufacture in space. But then there are other companies that co-own parts of the IP. Some of it is owned by this in-space manufacturing startup, and some of them is owned by the existing company. But so far there aren't any companies that own the IPs 100% because since this is a new area of business and technology, so these new startups they do not have the whole thing with them. So they are only specializing on how to create specialized equipments and environments to manufacture in space. So that's the whole thing here. So now I'm going to show one video of a company known as Varda Space.
Before before that, so
Okay.
you were talking about re-entry only from the point of view of like space manufacturing and stuff, but
Yes.
haven't there been uh, samples from Moon or Mars been sent back to Earth, and even astronauts that were coming back to Earth? Like, what was that process?
Yes, those have been brought back to Earth, but the size of the equipments are quite very different. Like that, those are very different use cases. But the companies that I'm mentioning, the payload capacity is only about 30 to 40 kilograms, which is half the weight of an average adult human being. So the use cases here is very different. Those are made for a very different purposes, like to bring back humans or other bigger objects from Earth. So it's not that this technology doesn't exist at all. It exists, but it is the use case is very different. Like a very easy example would be to think about, let's say, a car. There are different kinds of cars, but suppose you want to go in a very harsh off-road conditions. Not every car is equipped for those kind of things. For example, look at the armies. They have these Hummers and all those kind of vehicles that a normal regular car can't go in those areas. So those are specialized things. So this is a specialized thing so that is custom made for this kind of this purposes. And also, for example, again, like since these are commercial things, the cost is a very important thing. You can't use a huge box that carries 7 to 8 human beings to like bring back 40 kilograms of uh, payload back to Earth. The cost will be enormous. So they have to think about cost. And as the saying goes, necessity is the mother of all invention. So cost efficiency, that is why this kind of companies are coming up with cost efficient and tailor-made, custom-made solutions. So that's the thing here. It's not that the technology doesn't exist, but whether technology exists in a viable and reusable format or not, in a cost-efficient way or not. Okay, so this is from Varda Space, which provides both the infrastructure to manufacture in space as well as they have their own in-house re-entry vehicle system. So this is one company. Now this interview is a bit old, 2 years old now, but still relevant.
We make pharmaceuticals in orbit because The lack of gravity allows you to make new drug formulations that wouldn't otherwise be possible on Earth in Earth's gravity. So we build the manufacturing systems to make those pharmaceuticals and the reentry vehicles to bring them from space to home to the patient.
I failed chemistry in high school and Caroline did very well in it, but the basic point is that it won't be stable on Earth, it will be stable in microgravity.
Exactly. So think of it as part of the manufacturing process, just like temperature is part of the manufacturing process. Even though you change the temperature, the product remains the same. We use gravity to affect the manufacturing process in the same way.
So many questions from there.
Yeah, please.
But firstly, like, how do you get them back?
So we build our own reentry vehicle. So we are now the third company ever to produce a reentry vehicle to go from space to Earth. There's SpaceX, Boeing, and now little old Varda, 103 people, the third to ever do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we build those vehicles. They come and hit the atmosphere at Mach 25.
But it's not, for example, when we watch the re-entry of SpaceX, they land in a specific place. You need a broad land mass to be able to put it back in.
Exactly. So in the near term, we have a unguided vehicle, which means the area that we need is much larger. But we want to bring those dispersion areas closer and closer to eventually get football field size.
Well, this is very exciting, and you're very nice. I think it's probably very difficult what you're trying to do. Could you explain the complexity, the re-entry vehicle, getting it even into this area? I think that you guys are trying to land in an area the size of Maryland or something like that.
Oh, a little bit smaller than Maryland, but yeah, it's actually relatively simple. It's not trivial, though. Re-entering the Earth's atmosphere has been done before. We're just doing it in a new way for the specific use case of bringing pharmaceuticals home to patients. So it's a technology we've developed over the last few years.
But where in the world are you managing to find the space to land it? Like, are you doing it here in America? Are there the size that you need to be able to put the re-entry? Is it abroad?
So our first reentry earlier this year, that occurred in Utah, so there's a nice open area there. The next one's occurring in Australia. We're looking at opening up a landing site in New Mexico. So you'll see that reentry is going to become as common as launch, and so we're laying the infrastructure and building the systems for that.
Okay, the capsule's over my right shoulder. Okay, and so let's go to the relationship with Rocket Lab. Rocket Lab is a launch provider, but actually the majority of its revenues come from other services. So explain the work you do with them, because they don't actually take you to orbit.
That's right. So you heard Mr. Spice say it earlier. There's applications. Once you get to space, that's really just opening up the tip of the iceberg of what you can do once you get to space. So you can see this whole ecosystem developing, and you have an exponential growth right now because easier access to space means more demand for space, and that's the definition of an exponential growth function. So if you think about someone like Varda, who is only possible now because access to space is cheaper and easier, we're demanding more access to space. And so you can see the whole ecosystem come together to make these pharmaceuticals in orbit. So SpaceX is our launch provider. Rocket Lab sells us a bus to do power and comms and things like that. And then Varda is the reentry vehicle that has both the pharmaceutical manufacturing equipment inside. So we did a drug called ritonavir on our first mission.
Right.
And then we do the reentry of that vehicle. So it's team sport.
We've got 60 seconds. That team sport depends on regulation approval for companies like SpaceX, and they've just had a knockback. Is that an issue?
Regulation, so what I tell the team is anytime you're doing something that's never been done before, like we've never done this before, humans have never done this before, so of course you're going to need to push regulations along the way. Regulators are not the tip of the iceberg from technology perspective. So as the industry matures, so will regulation. So I wrote an op-ed last week about very specific standards that we can start to put in the FAA review process to make it cheaper and easier without reducing safety, for FAA analysts to check work.
So this is one of the companies that is working in this.
Money.
So he
Yes, please.
mentioned like manufacturing certain pharmaceutical items is better in no gravity.
Yes.
But then my curiosity is, while re-entry, will that impact or the physical pressure that it will go through, will that not affect the manufactured product?
So that is the challenge that they're trying to solve with this whole re-entry vehicle. So that's their proprietary technology. It's not just a random, like a cartoon box that they're using. Like, that's the whole. Yeah, the question you're asking is true. Like, that is going to affect. Like, this thing is going to affect. But the thing they're trying to develop is to create this kind of box where these effects are not, this external environment is not affecting what's inside this box. So they're trying to fix that thing, and that's why it's just a few companies working on it. It's not a trivial thing to do, like just wrap it up in any box and just throw it from space. So that's the whole effort that trying to put in there.
So, like the example he gave was for some pharmaceutical thing.
Yes.
So, is there enough profit or revenue to be made from this to justify having entire space architecture just for manufacturing their one thing, or there are multiple things that could be manufactured such that this becomes economically viable?
So I'm not sure whether it's if in the long term whether it's economically viable or not, but uh, when assessing frontier technologies and new businesses working on frontier technologies, the thing that I have to look at is that since there is an initial interest, so somewhere in some company, someone is thinking like, okay, maybe we should give it a try, like see what's happening there. So this is all part of their R&D process. Like in any company, if you look at this, I think Google is famous for such kind of things. They have a term called like the Google graveyard. Like a lot of like pet projects they start, but they never make it up to production and they die. So that's called as the Google graveyard. Experimental things. So this could so now this could be one of the two things. Whether either it will succeed or it will not succeed. But regardless of that, since there is a scope of this being like there's a scope of getting into space and trying it out. So at this early stage, people are trying it out. So from my knowledge, I'm not sure whether it's going to be viable over the long term or not. But from my assessment, it's at the let's try out stage currently, and it has to be done. It has to be done. It's not even if it's a loss, this needs to be done because that's the rule of the of like a free market economy. Because history is full of examples of companies that were invincible in their time, but they are non-existent currently. And we are at a time where we are seeing this thing happening in front of our own eyes. Two companies that come into my mind are Microsoft and Apple. Before the AI thing happened, they were some of the top companies. They were along with Google or Amazon. Some of the best companies, like the top companies. You can't even think like they will become irrelevant one day. But right now, there are questions about Apple's long term, like what are you going to do? Like you don't have any proprietary AI model. They're working on it, but they are like what can I say? Like they are lagging behind. So at one
But
point
the
of time,
main USP is the hardware, right?
who's
Apple's.
yes, but then again, like the hardware has so currently it has just become a common like it's just a medium to sell their services and everything. So
Because this point as well, I recently watched some MKBHD video where he was making this point about Apple's AI and thing.
yes.
And like one of his argument or like his point maybe is that the dominant hardware is Apple. You are going to use an AI model, but the device you will be using the AI model is going to be an Apple device. And they provide right now the best hardware also to run them locally. So they are capturing that part of the market.
Okay, but since smartphone are okay, so smartphones are the way through which consumers will use AI. But then again, there are other like iPhone has only one category. It like other companies like Samsung or any other company, they do not have different tiers of models like for different consumer groups. They just have one or two models like within the same. Uh, they could be considered to be as high-end models. So what would happen is that only a few people are going to like only people of certain income level are going to use those phones. And moreover, since they are not the AI model creators, they won't capture that part of the thing, the part of the revenue potential. Okay, they'll continue to sell phones, but they won't become the next company. Like for example, IBM, it still exists. It's not that it doesn't exist. IBM is still there and still it's still doing good. But it is nowhere near the companies that came up after that, like Microsoft and Apple. Apple itself is the example of during the era. Like what OpenAI and Anthropic is now compared to this now legacy companies like Google or Microsoft, Apple. Apple and Microsoft were the same when IBM was at its peak. Like IBM was the like this unbeatable giant company, and these were like small startups. Now what happened? IBM is just another company, just some small like mid-sized player out there. So what happened? Because they did not continuously focus on this kind of experimental R&D kind of thing. And that's the reason why if a company doesn't focus on this kind of R&D things, which at the surface level, I think like it's just wastage of money because nothing good is going to come out of it, which is true for 99% of the time, nothing good is going to come out of it. But in 1% of the time it might come, which is what happened to Google, which is how Google, in fact, they are the one who the team from Google was the one who created this paper. Yes. Attention is all you need, which is that started all of this. So these are the kind of experimental things you need to keep doing as a company. Otherwise, you will go into obsolescence, which is what Apple did. Like they were become okay, they thought that okay, we have this hardware, then there is no new technology going to come, and now they're suffering. They are now on the path to becoming an IBM. They will still. It's not that they'll disappear. They will still be there, but they won't be this like the top 7 richest companies or anything. They'll be somewhere around. Now, if I ask you, and if you even ask me, what is the rank of IBM? I don't know. I don't know. Like what's the rank? It's there somewhere. Like that's the tag they'll get. Apple, it's there somewhere. It's not like top 5, top 10. You're there somewhere. And so the whole point that I was trying to make is that this kind of the question you're asked that whether it's economically viable or not. So currently, I'm not sure whether it's economically viable or not, but it's still at the experimental stage, and it might be, it might not be. That's the thing. But regardless of that, this kind of things has to be done. And okay, so what else? Okay, speaking about the re-entry tech companies, this is one of the other companies, Dispatch. They are they are again similar to Varda in the way that they're also testing like re-entry technologies. Let me uh, let me disconnect and join again because I have to use my earphones now. So I'm going to disconnect, but
You can change the audio source rate.
oh yes, exactly. I can do this here.
They're going in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is Free Flyer 1, a satellite capable of carrying cargo to space and safely back down to Earth at a fraction of the cost of any conventional options today. We are Dispatch, a space logistics company building the future of the in-space economy. Space is an incredibly unique environment. It offers sterile, microgravity conditions with unlimited access to a near-perfect vacuum.
This allows for breakthroughs in space that are impossible to achieve on Earth. Capable of launching on any rocket, our satellite hosts payloads of up to 30 kilograms throughout its mission and uses a proprietary heat shield to protect the payload during its return to Earth. And this satellite is just the first step to building out entire industries in space.
So again, this is similar to Varda in the way that it has their own proprietary technology about bringing things back to Earth. And there is another one. This is also another one. Let's see if there's any videos about this. So okay, so there's a direct way to know whether this is viable or not, and there's a indirect way to infer what's happening there. From the fact that there are multiple startups trying to work on in this area, and their investments being poured into those things, it suggests that there might be some use after all in this area. Otherwise, it would just have been some science experiment, not more than that. And before I go to the space station near part of this discussion, I want to just look at one more video. Let me just look at it.
Check.
Look at
Y Combinator founder.
I build companies.
Peter Thiel is one of the most legendary investors in Silicon Valley.
I build companies and I support people who are building new things, from social networks to rocket ships.
He's helped build PayPal, Facebook, and Palantir into massive multi-billion-dollar companies. And now he has his sights set on space manufacturing. And I'm not talking about making rockets here on Earth. When I say space manufacturing, I actually mean producing physical goods in low Earth orbit and then bringing them back down to Earth. If all that sounds a little crazy, don't worry. It was completely new to me when I started working on this video. But I'm going to take you through the fascinating history of space manufacturing and then work through exactly how Thiel and his team are planning to make this a reality. When you're a multi-billionaire like Thiel, you don't need to get your hands dirty with founding a company to attack an interesting problem anymore. Thiel has created a platform for building and scaling the most promising business ideas with Founders Fund, his $6 billion investment firm. And Founders Fund isn't like most venture capital shops. The majority of VCs focus on meeting entrepreneurs that are running existing businesses and then giving them money to help grow what's already working. They usually take a board seat and help set the high-level strategy, but it doesn't go much deeper than that. And Founders Fund does do a lot of deals that look exactly like that. But recently, they've been going a level deeper and actually co-founding companies alongside entrepreneurs. They did this with the defense technology company Anduril, where Trey Stevens, who's a partner at Founders Fund, stepped up to co-found the company alongside Palmer Luckey. This model is typically called an incubation or a venture studio company. And there have been some massive successes. The cloud storage company Snowflake was started this way by Sutter Hill Ventures and is now worth $80 billion. And this is the model that Thiel and Founders Fund are using to make space manufacturing a reality. At the center of this project is Delian Asparahov. He's a VC at Founders Fund and a co-founder of Varda Space Industries. He'd been tracking the trends in the aerospace industry for years and assembled a team to build this new company. The name Varda is a Tolkien reference, like the other Founders Fund incubations Palantir and Anduril. Delian has basically been speedrunning Silicon Valley for the past 8 years. His resume has it all. TED Talk, check. MIT dropout, check. Y Combinator founder, check. Startup investor, check. And now he's basically speedrunning the company building process. Varda raised a $9 million seed round back in December of 2020, and they just closed a $42 million Series A in July of 2021. That's a pretty insane amount of money to raise so quickly. But Delian has a unique strategy for capturing this new market that completely justifies a more aggressive fundraising timeline. The typical path in Silicon Valley used to be work for a big company for 10 years, then work for a startup for the next 10, and then maybe become a VC in your 40s. But Delian is moving ridiculously quickly, which will be a big theme throughout this story. In fact, he's so obsessed with speed that he counts the exact number of days since Varda was founded.
This is the best way to institute an ethos, because at the end of the day, the thing that is always difficult about startups is early on, it's easy to move super fast. When you're like 6 people in a room, you all can communicate really easy, etc. Once you become 600, all of a sudden just decisions start to slow down, things start to slow down.
It's easy to look at Delian's insane level of energy and think that he might be getting ahead of himself on this whole manufacturing stuff in space thing. But he's been watching the industry closely for years, and space manufacturing actually dates back to the 60s.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Our great system will be judged by how we do in the field of space.
Even though America won the space race and landed a man on the moon on July 20th, 1969, it was the Russians who were technically the first to manufacture something in space. During the Soyuz 6 mission, Russian cosmonauts welded aluminum, titanium, and stainless steel together using a hardware unit called Vulcan. 4 years later, the United States launched Skylab, a fully functional space station equipped with a materials processing facility that could grow crystals, process alloys, and weld metals using an electron beam. All told, NASA astronauts spent 32 man-hours manufacturing stuff in space during that mission, and they made some pretty significant contributions that would be rolled into future missions. 10 years after the Skylab launch, NASA began using the Space Lab facility. Space Lab was a module that was carried aboard the space shuttle 26 different times and served as a short-duration research platform. It wouldn't stay in space, but while it was up there, it accomplished some pretty incredible things. Space Lab was an extremely large program and could be reconfigured for each mission, which led to an extremely high throughput of experimentation. For example, in just one mission, NASA performed 73 separate experiments in material science, astrophysics, and atmospheric research. Here's a picture of a mercuric iodide crystal that was grown on Space Lab 3. Pretty incredible. Fast forward to today, and essentially all space manufacturing takes place on the International Space Station. Most of the products that are made in space are designed to stay in space, and this makes sense. Giving astronauts the ability to fabricate parts quickly while aboard the space station speeds up research and development, and there's even a plan to 3D print food on the station eventually. But Delian has a completely different vision for Varda.
The more, let's say, commercial reason to start the company is that there's actually a whole wide array of products that could significantly improve quality of life for people here on Earth that can only be manufactured in microgravity.
Delian wants to bring everything that Varda makes in space back down to Earth. If that sounds insanely expensive, that's because it is. At least for now. Delian's entire plan with Varda is to position the company to take advantage of the exponentially decreasing cost of space travel. See, when it comes to making computer chips, we've been blessed by exponentially decreasing costs for decades now. The number of transistors in a dense integrated circuit essentially doubles every 2 years. This is called Moore's Law, and it explains why computers have been getting smaller, faster, and cheaper so consistently. Something similar is happening with space travel right now. When the space shuttle was in operation, launching a single kilogram into space cost $54,000 on average. SpaceX has been able to reduce that cost to just under $3,000 using their Falcon 9 rocket. And it's only getting cheaper. Every year, SpaceX is launching more and more rockets and dropping the cost of getting to space. This is critical for Delian's plan for Varda, and the main reason why he couldn't pursue this idea sooner. Elon plans to bring the cost per kilo down to just $10 with Starship, and while that's certainly an ambitious target, if he can even get close, the economics of space manufacturing will start to make a lot of sense. But you're probably asking yourself, what would you even make in space? We seem to be doing fine here on Earth, so what could possibly be worth all this effort? Well, there are a few good examples. The first is human organs. Growing a replacement heart or kidney in space might sound a little weird to some people, but if you're one of the 100,000 people waiting for an organ transplant, I'm pretty sure you won't care where it came from, as long as it works. And there's a lot of evidence suggesting that growing organs in microgravity yields remarkable results, since the cells don't collapse under their own weight in space. Semiconductor film could also benefit from low Earth orbit production, with some studies estimating that quality could increase by 10,000%. That's a huge step up from what's possible on Earth, but that's because semiconductor film not only benefits from the microgravity environment, but also from the complete lack of dust in space. Tiny dust particles routinely reduce the effectiveness of semiconductors here on Earth, but that's not a problem 1,000 miles up. The third opportunity is fiber optic cables, which powers the entire global internet. There is a special type of fiber optic cable made from fluoride glass called ZB-LAN that could have as little as 1/10 the signal loss of traditional optical fiber. The problem is that these ZB-LAN fibers are extremely difficult to make here on Earth. And again, it all comes down to gravity. As the molten glass is stretched into ultra-thin fibers, tiny crystals tend to form, which can weaken signals. When you're up in space, the microgravity environment suppresses the formation of these crystals, so the resulting cables can carry more data over longer distances. Human tissue growth has been tested on the ISS, but it's impossible to even try fiber optic production in space currently.
For example, in a lot of fiber optics, there's a toxic chemical that you want to coat the fiber optic with that protects it at the end of the process. No way is NASA going to let you put that toxic chemical on the ISS. If that thing gets out, you're potentially killing astronauts.
But Varda's space factories will be completely autonomous. Everything Varda launches into space will be completely self-contained, meaning they can work on any manufacturing problem without risking human lives. Okay, so we've established that what Varda's trying to do is only possible because scientists have been testing space manufacturing for decades, and SpaceX has dropped the cost of rocket launches so dramatically. But here's where the technology gets really interesting. See, Varda won't be building rockets, only payloads that sit on top of SpaceX rockets. But they still have to solve a few key problems once everything is actually up there. So Delian and his team are focusing on building 3 different systems. The first is the actual factory. This needs to be small enough and light enough to fit on a rocket while still holding all of the raw materials for whatever they are going to make on that trip. But you can't just shoot a box into space and hope that it stays up there and then lands where you can find it. So they are also building a satellite to accompany the factory in space and serve as a command and control module. Lastly, once the product is actually finished, you have to get it back down to Earth. And that's no easy task. Atmospheric re-entry is an extremely risky maneuver, and by far the hardest part of getting anything from space home safely.
We are regulated by the FAA because we're re-entering over airspace. If we miss, the atmosphere, even literally by 3 or 4 seconds, you're talking about rather than landing in the United States, you're accidentally landing in Europe.
This really illustrates how aggressive Delian's plan is for Varda. There are a few other companies that are working on on space manufacturing currently, but they mostly focus on developing the factory exclusively and then partner with NASA to get everything to the space station and back. The scale of the re-entry problem really can't be understated. In order to stay in orbit, anything in space needs to be traveling incredibly fast. A commercial airliner typically flies at around 500 miles per hour, but the International Space Station is traveling at 17,000 miles per hour. The deceleration that occurs during re-entry is extremely powerful, and anything Varda makes in space will have to be able to make it through re-entry without getting damaged in the process.
This is the point you made.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is what is addressing.
This part of
So
the
have they
equation
already
is so critical
developed-
to Varda's success that Delian even recruited a CEO with experience specifically in re-entry.
But I realized that for the CEO position, I wanted somebody that sort of had been at SpaceX, specifically on Dragon, in particular because we have a sort of re-entry problem that we're trying to solve. And, the Dragon is basically the only commercial re-entry vehicle that's ever been built.
Varda is clearly a moonshot type of company, but Delian is placing his bets very carefully. SpaceX is top-notch in terms of rockets, so no need to re-engineer things there. But no one has figured out how to solve re-entry at the industrial scale Varda is aiming for. Not even NASA. NASA is an amazing organization, but their budget is just $24 billion per year. For comparison, Walmart spends that much money every 3 weeks. While partnering with government research teams can work in some cases, it's not ideal for scaling an entirely new industry. For Varda to be truly successful, they need to be launching dozens of factories to space every month.
With Varda, the initial product that we're going after, if we were to eventually satisfy the entire market that we're going after, we would have multiple of our re-entry capsules coming down per day, and we would be buying a SpaceX rocket every other day.
Okay, so clearly Varda has ambitious goals. But exactly how big of a market is space manufacturing anyway? Well, it's currently a rounding error, but the global space industry is valued at around $420 billion, and that's growing really rapidly. Just last year, investors poured nearly $10 billion into space companies, each with slightly different approaches. Companies like Hadrian and Relativity are developing products on Earth that are meant for space. And a company called Made in Space is, you guessed it, making things in space. But everything Made in Space produces is meant to stay in space, not come back down to Earth. That's where Varda is unique. When it comes to the growth of the space industry, we're seeing steady progress start to compound in all sorts of key metrics. The cost of launching a satellite is falling dramatically. The time between launches is getting shorter and shorter. And even the number of humans who have been to space is increasing faster than ever before. When Jeff Bezos returned to Earth after his trip on Blue Origin's New Shepard rocket, he had some really poignant words about the importance of space manufacturing.
We need to take all heavy industry, all polluting industry, and move it into space and keep Earth as this beautiful gem of a planet that it is. Now that's going to take decades and decades to achieve, but you have to start, and big things start with small steps.
So, can space manufacturing become a $7 trillion industry? That number is certainly a bit ridiculous, but the global manufacturing industry does generate well over $7 trillion per year. And sure, we're not going to move all of that to space anytime soon. But what about in 100 years? How about 1,000? Humanity is going to become multiplanetary, probably within our lifetime. And when we begin seriously expanding our solar footprint, we're going to have options as to where we choose to build specific things. We'll be able to put certain things on Earth, other things on Mars, and we'll have plenty of space in between, pun very much intended. Some people find it difficult to get excited about things that will take years, if not decades, to bear fruit. But I, for one, am not one of those people. Big things have small beginnings, and Varda is clearly the first small step in an incredible direction. If you want to chat about space manufacturing, just leave me a comment below or DM me on Twitter. And please check out this recommended video. The YouTube algorithm thinks that you'll really like it.
So this video gave a very broad and a very clear summary about this whole thing. Plus, it's also 4 years old. So things almost 5 years old now. So things have certainly gone better over the next in the last 5 years or so. And talking about the viability, as he has said, like in theory, there is definitely a logic behind manufacturing in space. The whole point comes down to its viability. So, and again, like since we're at this such an early stage of this thing, it doesn't seem realistic at all. It almost sounds like a science fiction thing, but again, it has to begin from somewhere. And my logic is that since there is practical, like a logical reason behind it, it's not just hype. Unlike things like this metaverse concept, like it was, it just by listening to it, it seems like it was just a hype. Like you're owning things in a virtual world. The whole NFT that seemed like at the surface, you don't even have to think critically. It seemed like such a scam. You can just copy and paste things, but no, for some reason it became like valuable, like because you have this digital ID or something. What does it matter? I can copy paste the same thing. Doesn't matter to me. Similarly, owning a piece of land in a like a AR world, like those like seem very scammy, which it turned out to be. Now I don't know if any of those things would mean anything currently. But since it was at the peak of the hype cycle back in around 2020 to 2021, so it had its value. But unlike to that thing, I think it has a real logical background, like very validation behind it. So I think it has long-term potential. So this was about the in-space manufacturing and the re-entry technologies. The other thing that I was planning to mention is the ISS. So ISS has been on orbit since 2000, I think. So it's been about 26 years now. And it's being planned to be decommissioned in 2030. Now, the first obvious question is what was the purpose of ISS in the first place? So people mainly go there for science and engineering experiments. So as you've seen, the whole point of manufacturing in space, it had reached this commercial stage because the the original work started back in the ISS, those early prototype like engineering and experimental stage. I mean, like see this kind of memes, like he had to walk so that someone else can run. That is this kind of sayings, as the saying goes. So that's what it is. Like things had to walk in the ISS for it to have developed into this commercial stage currently. So that's all due to the early experiments that happened in the ISS. Moreover, it also like tested what happens to the human body and other things when it stays in space for extended period. So that is another science experiment. And it might, so that the learnings from those experiments will will help in planning future missions when when humans become a multi-planetary species. Because as we have just seen in last week's video, like when I was talking about when I was looking at the video about the spacesuits, like if you're in space for even like 10-15 seconds, like you'll be dead within 10-15 seconds, because the side that is facing the sun will get instantly burned, but the side that is facing outside, the opposite side of sun will get instantly frozen. And additionally, it also have a lot of radioactive rays going through your body, which will cause all sorts of damages to the DNA. So you'll be dead within a minute. So the spacesuits helps in like creating a more stable environment for those purposes. But even when you are within the whole, even if you're within a spaceship or the space station, the environment is still very different from our natural habitat, which is Earth. So what happens when people stay there for longer periods of time? So those are the kind of findings that I think from staying in the ISS for the past 25 years, the scientists have gathered those kind of information, which will definitely help in future missions. But it has been almost 26 years now, and the technology is it has become very outdated, and it is becoming it is becoming more and more expensive to repair and keep the ISS in service. So they have decided to decommission it. And currently, there is not a very structured plan how to, and not just how to, but who is going to replace, what is going to replace the ISS. But there are multiple candidates for this thing, multiple commercial companies that are competing for this. And I think that it over time there will be multiple space stations. Okay, currently we only have the ISS, and that's all. And now that there are multiple startups working on it, and the video that I'm going to show, they have mentioned that it's a $1 billion project. And the thing that came to my mind is that okay, this is a $1 billion project, and there are multiple companies working on it, so more or less they will also be spending that much amount of money. But since there's only one ISS, what about the rest? So what? $1 billion gone to waste? That's not going to be it. What I think is that one of the candidates will win to replace the ISS and become the next official ISS, but the remaining will also get into orbit for other commercial purposes. If not anything else, for in-space manufacturing, as that will be at least one of the use cases. So like so again, ISS will also become not just ISS, like space stations in general, that those things will also become a kind of a commercial thing, not just
So currently, the
government
ISS is a
ventures.
government owned entity, right?
I can't hear you. What happened?
The ISS.
I can't hear you at all.
Hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello.
Are you saying something?
I am. Can you hear me or not?
No, I can't. Okay, try speaking now.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I forgot what I said. So the ISS is a government-owned entity, right?
It's owned by 5 space agencies, not just one government. 5 different countries, and 5 different space agencies.
So when one like officially the ISS is replaced by something else,
Yes.
after that, who is going to give permission, or do you need any permission for the other supposed space stations to be launched, or a private player can just launch it by themselves?
No, I don't think they can just launch it by themselves. There are laws. Laws will be there. There has to be laws. So I think the video about Varda that we saw, the 4 minute video, that the CEO mentioned, like when humans are doing something for the first time, there will be legal and regulatory issues because nothing has been done in that thing for the first time. It's being done for the first time. The same thing happened with AI, but what is copyright, what's not copyright, like what those kind of things. So those things will also come into play. I don't think currently any space law exists about okay, what does it mean to launch space stations in space? I think there will be debates and new things coming up. But eventually things will be governed by some kind of law. because we live in a civilization that is governed by law. It's not a free world, like a anarchist post-apocalyptic world. So there are structured governments that define laws and regulations. So there, if it doesn't exist, which I think most likely doesn't exist, it will be formulated. Okay. Let me know. This is one of the candidates, like one of the startups that are working on a new space stations.
Captain's log, stardate 1513.1. The International Space Station has been around for a quarter century. It has cost the United States and Russia $155 billion. I have been sent to this office foyer to do this bit and to update you on the plans for a new era of space living. We're at the headquarters of Vast Space. They are a commercial space habitat company. They're going to try to replace the ISS, and we are going to check on their progress. The ISS, of course, is one of humanity's great achievements. It has bonded nations around science and our shared yearning to explore and go beyond Earth. It is, however, also way past its sell-by date. It creaks, it leaks, and it's been bombarded by space debris for decades. Vast's big idea for what's next is this. It's called the Haven 1, and it's meant to fly to space in 2027. It will be modern and sleek and have science labs and room for 4 people. Building Haven 1 will cost about $1 billion, which is a lot of money. The man paying for much of this is Jed McCaleb. He's smart, super rich, and super into science and space, which is nice.
It's super important for humanity to get out into the solar system. The human psyche needs a frontier, right? This is the way we evolved. There's always been new lands to explore. And I have a lot of money, sure, but I don't have infinite amount of money for space station business. And there has to be an economic engine that's driving this whole thing. The person tasked with actually building Haven 1 and its successors is this guy, Max Hout.
3 cameras, wow.
And he's under considerable pressure to do stuff on time and on budget, which never happens in the space industry, but he's smiling anyway. This is what we'll look like when we're in space.
Well, hopefully you're not here in space, you're inside and you're much smaller. Yeah. But yes, that's Haven 1, and it's really, not the end in itself. It's our first stepping stone for crewed spaceflight. So our key approach is that before we build a multi-module space station that can have crew continuously on it, which is what the ISS is, we need stepping stone to get there. So the first one of these stepping stone is our demo satellite, which we just launched. The next one, which we're launching in Q1 2027 and building now, is Haven 1. We expect it will be the world's first commercial space station. No one has ever done it. And more importantly, it will be a sustainable, low cost. And so our view is that to replace the ISS and obviously go even beyond that with habitat on Moon, Mars, and other orbit, the first step is lower cost. Our approach to do it is vertical integration, speed, and mass production.
In other words, let's see what happens when companies, and not bureaucratic nation states, make these things. Holy cow, man. Everybody should have one of these.
We could play some games if you want later, but not really.
Vast finds itself in the midst of a competition to replace the ISS. Several groups, including the likes of Axiom, Blue Origin, and Starlab Space, are all racing to get to space with their various habitat designs. Vast has been the wild card of the bunch, and has seemed to be moving much faster than its rivals.
So yeah, this is our master control room designed for human spaceflight. We tested it already for our first mission, which is our demonstration satellite that we launched on November 2. Which we used to test all of the key technologies of Haven 1, excluding the human ones.
So computing, solar panels.
Computer, software, solar panel, batteries, all the procedures, all the operators. The key one is that we wanted to deorbit it controllably. We had a box of a few hundred kilometers, and we hit it just a little bit on the side, but full success. So it's a great, stepping stone mission before Haven 1. So now with Haven 1, we get to launch it without the crew, and then at that point, it's a very large satellite. Once we get comfortable that it's safe, kind of our big brother, SpaceX, they then do the job of transiting the crew to Haven 1. And then once we are docked, crew then open the hatch and stay there for 2 weeks. And it's also, Dragon is also a lifeboat. So if something goes wrong, you have procedure for the crew to retreat into Dragon and then re-enter using the normal process.
Super cool. You guys are so far the rare space company. I mean, you're moving quite fast. These things usually are many delays on the journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think our friends at SpaceX definitely set the pace for everybody else. And right
Are we
now,
going to watch
all
the whole
focus is
video?
on Haven 1, the space station being built.
Not the whole video, just a bit.
Vast's engineering compound is impressive. The company has hundreds of people beavering away across multiple buildings, everyone operating under the daunting task of making something that only massive governments have constructed before.
I want to see some of the other companies, like if there are shorter videos of, they mentioned Blue Origin. I think this could be it. Let me see.
There have been dreams for a very long time of robust commercial activities in space with growing populations and so forth. Now we have access to systems that cost less to launch and land, and we now understand how to build destination systems that last for a long time. It's the commercial world in which advanced capabilities get normalized and become a part of everyday life. Orbital Reef is a full-fledged commercial space station.
Think of it as a village. Think of it as many different organizations and people in their own parts of Orbital Reef doing their own activities.
Where all types of companies can come together and do research and/or production, and also provide opportunities for tourists to come and just experience what space is like.
It's an ecosystem that will allow ideas to grow, to germinate, whole new fields and areas of economic arena, new science that we can't even imagine now.
Orbital Reef starts with two strategic partners, Blue Origin and Sierra Space. These two together have the fundamental elements that give us both transportation of cargo and crew and the destination system essentials. In addition, we have a set of expert teammates, which includes Boeing, who will be developing our research module.
We'll be providing crew and cargo transportation with the Starliner. And when the Orbital Reef is operational, we'll provide all of the operations and maintenance necessary to sustain the Orbital Reef.
Genesis, who are developing the single-person spacecraft for suitless extravehicular activity. Hard to make sure that Orbital Reef is not just for the entities that have had access to space so far. It's intended to be humanity's footprint in Earth orbit, and that means all the nations and companies and peoples of the world.
I think that Orbital Reef offers.
So I got the idea about what they're trying to do. This is also almost 5 years old now. I don't know how much progress they have made, but the other video, which is I think about only 2 weeks old maybe. So they mentioned that the Vast Space, the company that they were covering in that video, they're moving the fastest among the others. So this is mostly they're talking about their idea and strategy, but realistically, I don't know how much they've come up, because it also looks quite big compared to the one that Vast are doing. But I think it's mostly in the ideation phase. I don't know how much real progress they have made. The other company they mentioned was Axiom Space. Let's see. Axiom. Years ago.
There's sort of two philosophies in aerospace. One is you sit around and you think about requirements and you think about what you want to build. Or you build something, you test it, you figure out what works, you build another generation. We really believe at Axiom Space, the path to building something that doesn't exist in the world is you've got to start building prototypes. We sit and think about what we want to build for a little bit, but then we just go build the thing, test the thing, fire the engine. Our role really is to lead the way.
A year ago, walking into this facility, you didn't see nearly as much hardware as you see today. Full-scale mock-ups, training hardware, flight hardware. Axiom was created to build a space station, and that's exactly what this team is doing.
We're still on target to launch our first module the end of 26. The pressure vessel is undergoing welding at Talassolenia, our partner in Italy. There's some of the largest forgings in the world. There's only a couple places in Europe that could even forge some of the pieces. The pressure vessel will arrive in Houston next year, and then we'll do all the final outfitting at our spaceport facility. And in the 50-year history of human spaceflight in Houston, it will be the first human-rated spacecraft ever built in Houston. Our teams are building all the other things. The life support system, guidance and navigation, we're building our own propulsion system. Our philosophy is to keep as much engineering in-house as possible. It allows us to have long expertise over a long time because we want to be building modules and adding to our space station for years and years.
Through our station, we will open up low Earth orbit to the world, to explore, to travel, to complete science in space and beyond.
Microgravity represents this enormous natural resource, and we think there are things that we can do there that lead to medical breakthroughs, material breakthroughs, and leads to a better world for everyone.
It's the ability to produce the highest quality of parts, materials, biological media, an environment that is nearly pristine.
Behind this is the Earth Observatory. We will fly it as part of the third module that goes to the International Space Station. And then the International Space Station robot arm will actually move it and position it underneath HAB1. So it will have this fantastic view of the Earth through the largest space windows ever attempted.
This is as close as you can get to actually doing an EVA in space. We talk about the overview effect, where crews come back and see the world in a different sense than they did before. And I think this is where you can really contemplate that whole experience.
This is the same company that is also developing the spacesuits that we saw last week, the EVA suits. So I think this is the most latest video. I think that was about 2 years old, the last one. 2 years. So let's briefly look at this one.
There is a generation alive today that has never known a day where every human was on Earth. For them, space has never been a new frontier. For them, the question is not, can we live and work in space? The question is,
what comes next?
For nearly 3 decades, the International Space Station has been the home off-planet for those in service of humanity. An orbiting laboratory sparking new discoveries, life-changing innovations, and historic breakthroughs.
But what comes next?
What comes next matters, because what is needed is not just to continue our presence in space, but to enable a new generation to unlock the potentials of microgravity. To invite industry to pose the questions that will give rise to the next age of humanity.
How can we transcend the limitations of our planet so that our world becomes a better place to live?
The answer is to establish a platform for nations and researchers to conduct more pioneering investigations than ever before.
The answer is to be an orbital forge to unprecedented industrial developments that can scale exponentially.
The answer is to maintain a continuous heartbeat just outside Earth's atmosphere from which humanity can venture ever further out.